In this video, we'll be studying about an important process, that is fermentation. Now, fermentation is actually, when we are talking of the respiration process in the plants, we know there can be aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration. And respiration is the breakdown of the complex macromolecules into simpler forms. So, in this fermentation process, we'll be studying about how the pyruvic acid, which has been formed as a result of the glycolysis, undergoes the breakdown into simpler forms. The pyruvic acid, which is being formed as a result of the glycolysis through a series of reactions, or the EMP pathway, we also call it, it undergoes the breakdown further, and depending upon the presence or absence of oxygen, this pyruvic acid undergoes a different kind of breakdown. So we will be studying the fate of pyruvic acid when the oxygen is absent or is not sufficiently available. So first thing to remember is the fermentation is the process of the breakdown of the pyruvic acid formed due to glycolysis, and it takes place in absence of oxygen, or the condition is when O2 is not sufficiently available for complete oxidation of pyruvic acid. So the fermentation will happen only when the oxygen is not available or when the O2 is not sufficiently available. Now in this case, that is fermentation, when oxygen is not available, the 3-carbon compound, pyruvic acid is a 3-carbon atom compound, it undergoes incomplete oxidation. So in fermentation, there is incomplete oxidation, and the reason being due to the non-availability of oxygen. So the pyruvic acid will undergo incomplete oxidation, and it will form simpler compounds, that is ethanol and carbon dioxide or lactic acid. Now this process takes place in the cytoplasm. So fermentation takes place in cytoplasm, and it is a anaerobic respiration. So it is anaerobic in nature. It is anaerobic in nature because of the non-availability of oxygen. Now, this process of breaking down of pyruvic acid in absence of oxygen or anaerobic condition is not very productive. We'll be studying how. Now, the fermentation is divided into two types. This fermentation process can be of two types. That is, first type, when we are talking types, first is alcoholic or alcoholic fermentation. It is alcoholic fermentation. The alcoholic fermentation is so called because it results into the formation of ethanol and carbon dioxide. This alcoholic fermentation, it takes place in plants only. It is found in plants. And if we see to the equation, the glucose molecule which is being formed undergoes the incomplete breakdown, and it results into the formation of two molecules of ethyl alcohol plus 2 ATP are produced, and 2 CO2 carbon dioxide molecules are produced, and it produces energy of 59 kilocalories. So this much amount is produced during the alcoholic fermentation. Now here only two molecules of ATP are produced and two NADP are regenerated. So two NADH, sorry, and two molecules of ATP are produced due to alcoholic fermentation. This reaction is catalyzed by an enzyme. These are the products, that is the net gain, we call it. Net gain, 2 ATP and 2 NADH. Then the enzyme which is responsible is alcohol dehydrogenase. Alcohol dehydrogenase is the enzyme which catalyzes this reaction of converting the glucose finally due to alcohol and this in the cytoplasm of yeast. So this reaction takes place in the cytoplasm, and NADH is then reduced to NADH2 is reduced to NADH. This process is used in brewing industry, that is making of alcohol. But when the concentration, this takes place in the yeast, cytoplasm of the yeast. Now when the concentration of the alcohol increases to greater than 13%, that means around 15 to 16%. When it goes to 15 to 16%, it is toxic to yeast. Now when the yeast will die, the fermentation process will be affected. That means it will not take place. Therefore, in order to obtain alcohol-rich beverages, the concentration of alcohol can be increased in such cases by the distillation process. We were talking about when the alcoholic fermentation is taking place, and it takes place in the plants. Second fermentation process is the lactic acid fermentation. Now the lactic acid fermentation process, it is a process in which the lactic acid is produced as a product, or the breakdown of pyruvic acid takes place and lactic acid is formed. If we see to the equation, this is lactic acid and 2 ATP are produced, and it releases further less energy, that is 36 kilocalories. This is the lactic acid we are talking of. Now it occurs in some bacteria. It is found to take place in some bacterial forms and animal cells. That is the muscle cells, we know it. So this lactic acid fermentation is found in these places. Now the enzyme pyruvic acid dehydrogenase, enzyme which is responsible is pyruvic acid dehydrogenase, or we also call it as lactate dehydrogenase. This is a similar name for this enzyme. Pyruvic acid dehydrogenase or lactic dehydrogenase catalyzes this particular reaction. The process is very important, and it produces 2 ATP again over here. So the net gain, when we talk, it is similar. Net gain 2 ATP and 2 NAD. Now 2 NADH are produced similar to this one over here. Now when we see the fermentation process takes place in 2 steps. That is, first is the formation of the alcohol and the regeneration of regeneration of NADH. Same way over here, lactic acid fermentation also, the process is taking place in 2 steps, in which one step is the formation of the lactic acid and the second is the regeneration of NADH. Now, how this regeneration of NADH is taking place actually? The two NADH molecules donate electrons and hydrogen atoms to the two pyruvate molecules, and it results into the formation of two lactate molecules, and it regenerate NAD+. So this is the fermentation process, and fermentation process is you can just see to it and identify that alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation are the two types depending upon the products. The process of fermentation has been used extensively in brewing industry, baking industry, in the formation of the vinegar, in dairy industry, and also the production of various kinds of organic acids. But it is important for you to understand that the process of fermentation is a harmful process because there is not much energy generated due to the breakdown of pyruvic acid. And the breakdown of pyruvic acid chiefly is important for the production of energy for the organism to conduct various metabolic activities. So over here we find that then only 2 ATP are generated during these during the anaerobic breakdown of the pyruvic acid. We will study in the next video about the aerobic breakdown of the pyruvic acid, and then you will be able to compare the amount of energy which is actually generated by the complete oxidation of the pyruvic acid, because over here we are having incomplete oxidation.